When you talk about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, you're talking about the worst act of domestic terrorism in the history of this country.
When you look at this photo, anybody in their right mind would demand justice for Greenwood.
I'm attorney Damario Solomon-Simmons. Law is my ministry, justice is my passion. And I've been working on trying to get justice and reparations for the massacre for over 25 years now.
Joining me now is Damario Solomon-Simmons, attorney for Tulsa survivors and descendants, and he's been pursuing justice for this case for a long time. So Damario, so happy to have you here.
One of the things that I really enjoy about being a lawyer is you get to fight. You can fight one or two ways. You can fight with the physical violence, or you can fight with your words and what you write.
As far as a legal narrative is concerned, is as long as you use the term mob, you have an image that the guilty can hide behind. Now, if I say, like Damario is saying in the Justice for Greenwood lawsuit, that the city of Tulsa destroyed Greenwood, that changes the language significantly, because until you name names, you're not gonna really create any change, because there were people who were benefactors of this event. But if you name it, then you set the grounds for a legal fight that you actually have a potential to win.
My family's been here in Oklahoma since the 1830s. Black Creek Indians came on a Trail of Tears. I grew up here in North Tulsa, went to school right down the street here on Greenwood. Then I went to Booker T. Washington High School. And I went to University of Oklahoma. I remember sitting in Intro to African American Studies class when I first really learned about the massacre in Greenwood. I reluctantly raised my hand and said, I'm from North Tulsa and that's not true. And of course I was wrong. And it was just an embarrassing moment to realize that I didn't know my own history of my own community.
People from all over the country would ask, where are you from? And I would say Tulsa, Oklahoma. And people would say, Black Wall Street, Tulsa Race Riot. And I was a bit embarrassed because I had no clue what they were talking about.
Now we call it the massacre, after we've later learned what actually took place.
My grandfather said, have a seat. I survived the massacre. Man, when he told me that, I felt like somebody had just stacked a boulder on my shoulders. How is it I didn't know this?
I said, that's what Aunt Janie would talk about. And we thought Aunt Janie was just nuts, you know? And no, she was traumatized. And if that was my Aunt Janie, I could only imagine all the other survivors.
Oh, my name is, my maiden name is Lessie Benningfield.
You don't look 109.
I don't look 109.
No, ma'am.
I don't?
No.
Well, for goodness sake, thank you.
I'm still amazed. I'm still in shock. I have anger issues at sometimes because I cannot believe what she went through. And it's been swept under the rug like it didn't happen.
So May 30th, Dick Rowland, a young teenage shoeshine boy, went to the Drexel building to use the restroom. It was the only place that a colored person could use the bathroom then. He tripped going into the elevator. Well, Sarah Page screams and word gets out. But the word that gets out is that Dick Rowland had just tried to rape Sarah Page in the elevator in broad daylight on a holiday. Well, later that evening, Dick Rowland is barricaded in the top floor of the courthouse building. About 6,000 angry white men assemble here. An incident happens where a white man fights with a black man over a gun. The gun goes off, all mayhem breaks loose.
When you talk about the 1921 Tulsa Race Massacre, you're talking about the worst act of domestic terrorism in the history of this country. And it was done by the whole white society. You know, a lot of times we want to say a white mob. No, it was white Tulsa. You're talking about 38 to 40 city blocks burnt down to the ground, 8 to 10,000 people made homeless overnight, 3,000 people dead and or disappeared, never to be heard from again. Over $200 million in property damage destroyed. And when I say that number, that big number, we're talking over 1,500 homes and businesses destroyed. You're talking about people seeing and smelling the flames as they escape for their lives.
So this image is everything. First place in American history where citizens of the United States had bombs dropped on them. My family resided here. That's where our family's property was. It's so profound when you look at the magnitude, one section of the entire district. That's a humongous area, and we're just looking at a quarter of it.
What was my great-grandmother thinking when she had to jump on the back of a truck and barely escape racial terror violence?
You look back behind you and all of your belongings are being stolen out of your house, taken, and then your house is set on fire.
She said people were shooting at her. She saw people die in front of her.
They saw pure, unadulterated evil.
There was a plan already in place to take the land in Greenwood. None of this is accidental. It's not about Dick Rowland and Sarah Page in the elevator. It was, in effect, an ethnic cleansing to make sure nobody could come back to this area of African descent.
When the National Guard came, they joined in. The general, he wrote in his report, he saw 25,000 whites belligerently and mindlessly destroying everything.
It wasn't just a minor event. This was an attempt at extermination, and we are the voices, we are the survivors of those who are probably fertilizing the soil of these lands with their bones and blood. When you look at this photo, anybody in their right mind would demand justice for Greenwood.
So you are at the historic Vernon AME Church, and we're not just an ordinary church. We are in the middle of historic Greenwood on Black Wall Street. I wanted to help in preserving the history and telling the history, and I just wanted to be a part of this great energy that's in this church. Before the massacre, after the massacre, today, it is still the hub of this community. Okay, so this picture is after the massacre. This is Vernon, this is what survived. This is what we call the basement, the space where a lot of the residents of Greenwood hid during the massacre. And so it's a powerful space, and you can feel it when you walk in here. The Sunday following the massacre, Vernon had church. There was still rubble all around. How do you have the strength to do that?
The big question at this point is, how did all these black people get here to Oklahoma before it became a state? Most people in America have no idea.
Why Greenwood? We got to back up and understand the totality of this story. People were coming here to be free, to own land, to have businesses and build something for themselves, free of white oppression.
It was a tight-knit community who had shared principles, shared values that they agreed upon, and black people were thriving.
What you have here is literally a city within a city. This is a masterful, self-sustaining community, really beautiful. How many seats do you think are in this theater? And it has a big balcony, everything. 750 seats. The Dreamland Theater sat right here behind me. The people who owned it, John Williams, and that's Lula. Lula was probably one of the wealthiest women in Greenwood.
Dr. A.C. Jackson is one of the most prominent known murder victims of the massacre.
He was recognized as one of the most able black surgeons and physicians in the United States of America, not by Greenwood, but by the Mayo Clinic.
I always think about what would Black America be like if the brilliancy of Dr. A.C. Jackson was allowed to continue to flourish. This whole lot used to be the Stratford Hotel. It was the largest African-American owned hotel in the nation. It really struck me, hotels like Hilton, Hyatt. I said, man, that could have been in Stratford. And what a difference it would have made for Black people throughout this nation.
You know, I didn't know I came from greatness. I didn't know I came from Black excellence. And so I get a little upset about this conspiracy of silence that sort of reverberated throughout my dad's generation and my generation. I believe that it is our duty to make sure that we right that wrong and that we teach our children and our future generations what happened here so we don't repeat it.
They need to stop trying to keep it out of schools. Everybody needs to learn about it. That's history. That's American history.
They say that history teaches us not to repeat it. But I say history is important for you to learn how to move forward. It connects you to the people. It gives you a standing. I think about the love. That was a community who believed in helping other families stake ground in this land. That building is what they were all about.
This is about 2 years after the massacre. And look at how many tents people are rebuilding on this house. This is what we are. This is what we do. We rebuild in the face of adversity. Took a lot of courage. Mr. Bryant had enough foresight to gather bricks from his burned out building and place them here. That's why you see these bricks here. The fact that somebody had enough forethought to rebuild this in the way that they did was to ensure that we wouldn't suffer from historical amnesia. If there's ever an example of from the ashes, this is it.
And then there's a second massacre that comes through. Urban renewal.
Urban renewal, or what we call Negro removal.
And then you see this highway built specifically, intentionally to destroy the remnants of Greenwood and to create a physical barrier between Black Tulsa and white Tulsa. It needs to come down because this is a symbol of white supremacy. This is no different than a Confederate monument. When something is put up for the specific purpose of basically imprisoning a community, we shouldn't have to live with these type of remnants.
We feel that urban renewal destroyed Greenwood a second time. And so I often talk about the physical violence that took place back in 1921, and decades later, the policy violence came through and destroyed it yet again. And that is what we're dealing with right now with the gentrification.
When I was a child, there were still 169 businesses, Black owned, in the Greenwood district. That would only last a few years because they would eventually all be torn down.
All this development, the restaurants, the banks, the hotels, the office buildings, they're not owned by Black people. And more importantly, it's not owned by the original inhabitants of Greenwood. What does it mean for a person like Mother Randle, who suffered the massacre, and then in 1980, they took her home and moved her out in deep North Tulsa. And her property, her family had owned for 70 years. It's now just some white-owned business.
We have to really recognize not just what happened here, but what's still happening here, because we wouldn't be talking about it if it wasn't still happening. Greenwood is still burning. And people ask, what does that mean? It means that until you put the fire out, it's still burning.
In your life in Tulsa, what do you think has changed?
I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I don't see a great big change.
Don't.
That's the best answer I can give you.
Mm-hmm.
When I think about what happened 100 years ago, I have to fast forward to 2016 when my twin brother, Terrence Crutcher, was killed with his hands in the air at the hands of the same police department that deputized Klansmen. The parallels are so stark. So much has changed, yet so much has stayed the same. There's been no solace. There's been no repair, no restitution.
We have not got an ounce of justice, not from this city, not at all. It's hard to gravitate to what we've been through.
2017, as we were getting closer to the centennial, the city of Tulsa was really trying to clean up their image. They knew the world was going to be watching, and they started trying to put forth this false narrative of Tulsa triumphs. We've come so far since the massacre, and it really was infuriating me. So I started thinking, what can we do here? We really didn't know if there was any legal path, but I was like, we got to do something. So Mayor Bynum had quoted on numerous occasions that the massacre was the reason for the inequalities in Tulsa today. And then we take those statements and we put them in our litigation. It shocked the whole world. Once we realized we have a real, valid, live case.
The quest for justice has been left to the three known survivors. That's Hughes Van Ellis, Lessie Benningfield Randle, and Viola Ford Fletcher.
Things haven't been the same ever since we filed that lawsuit.
Today, I'm visiting Washington, D.C. for the first time in my life. I'm here seeking justice, and I'm asking my country to acknowledge what happened in Tulsa in 1921.
I still see it today in my mind 100 years later.
We aren't just black and white pictures on a screen. We are flesh and blood. I was there when it happened. I'm still here. Justice will be served.
We had our first ever hearing in over 100 years on this issue in the Tulsa County District Courts. All three of the survivors were there. And then we had our second hearing. It was the most people, I think, in the history of Tulsa to ever go and watch a court hearing. It was so amazing. It was the first time that a court had even given us anything to vindicate these people. Now we're in 2023. I said, you know, Mother Fletcher is with us today. Today is her 109th birthday. And now, 102 years later, she's here in this court, still asking for justice. So fast forward, I get a call from a reporter asking me, do I care to comment on my case being dismissed? I could not believe it. It was just the most devastating thing. It was also amazing because Uncle Red said, can we appeal?
We're not through yet.
That's right.
We just started.
That's right, Uncle Red. I said, absolutely. I said, we're definitely going to appeal.
And Uncle Red, you told me earlier before this interview began, you're going to fight until you get justice.
That's right. I'm here.
Yeah.
I'm
Amen.
still here.
Amen.
I'm here to fight.
Thank you. Keep fighting. You said if it takes 28 years, Uncle Red.
28 years, I'm here.
You know, Uncle Red, you know, he passed in October. He really, really wanted to see justice before he passed away, and we really wanted to make that happen. So we had a press conference over at Vernon AME. I said, listen, we've been here before. It's unfortunate that we continue to hit these roadblocks, but I said, well, if B.C. Franklin can be practicing law days after the massacre in a tent, suing the very people, well, not just the very entities, but the very people that burned down the community, and damn it, we're gonna keep fighting all the way. And so we filed our appeal.
They retained the case, so that was huge, huge victory. These plaintiffs have been waiting for almost 103 years for their opportunity to be in court to prove what happened to them and their community. We're just simply asking that this court give us the opportunity to be remanded back to the district court to prove our claims. We look forward to that. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I want City of Tulsa to stop banking on what they went through.
This was the whole charade that the city and the powers that be were playing. Oh, we're so happy to be in Greenwood. Yeah, you're happy now because you own everything. Yes, you want tourism to come to Greenwood because it's going to benefit you. It does not benefit black people. All the children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren of the people on this wall and the thousands of others that suffered the massacre, they deserve the first slice of any revenue that comes in to this city.
You took it, you still have it, give it back.
You say it happened, but you're constantly putting money back into your pockets. That's not right. How's that justice for the survivors and what they went through?
Acknowledging but not actually fixing it is the epitome of white supremacy. Because now you say, you see my humanity, and you telling me I don't give a damn. So justice looks like acknowledgement plus tangible action. The tangible action that the victims say, this is what we need to be made whole. That is reparations.
Justice would be reparations for the survivors who are living at 109 and their descendants. Justice would be land reclamation. Justice would be scholarships for descendants.
Put it in a trust for these kids where they can go to college and then bring it back to North Tulsa and build North Tulsa. The same stuff that's out south needs to be out north. We shouldn't have to travel miles to get to a hospital.
Greenwood had a hospital at the time of the massacre. North Tulsa does not have a hospital. And black Tulsans live 11 to 14 years less than white Tulsans because we don't have access to adequate health care. I want to see the Dr. A.C. Jackson Memorial Hospital. Mental health care for survivors and descendants.
Generational trauma has reverberated through our family's history.
Those who suffered the massacre have not received anything, but they've had to actually pay taxes to the very entities that destroyed everything. So there should be tax abatement for a minimum of 100 years.
Justice would be Terrence being alive, but justice would be that this never happened.
You can't make nobody learn nothing, but you can teach them. And eventually, if they have any right thing in their heart, it will come to pass. And now if we all do that, we'd have a different world.
Yes, ma'am.
We'd have a different world.
Oh man, Mother Randle, obviously I love all my clients. Mother Randle is so special to me because, first of all, she's the named plaintiff. If no Mother Randle, there's no case. And she shows up at every hearing. She's 109 years old.
You remember who Damario is?
Damario?
Yes.
I don't even like the guy. I think he's
I love her. I love being her lawyer.
I don't know how in the world he carries these fights with him on his shoulders, but he's doing it. He's doing it. And this community loves him.
Damario has stuck with us from day one through the good, bad, and ugly. I tell Damario that his work, our work, will go down in Oklahoma history books.
I'm just standing on the shoulders of the B.C. Franklins. I'm just standing on the shoulders of the Amos T. Halls, the Jim Goodwins, Don Rawls, Maxine Horner, and the Charles Ogletrees, and so many other people. And that's the work of Justice for Greenwood. That's the work of being in the community.
This is not a matter of past trauma, it is concurrent.
And we will not rest
until justice comes.
When we win, what I want to see is the community feel a victory. It's like we're seen. For once, we're seen. Not have to continue to fight on this one issue.
They really want to see justice. They want to have their day in court. I want her to be able to tell her story in front of the whole world. The evidence is out there. We're saying something. Now do something about it. Give them the justice they deserve.
I knew a lot of people on this wall. They were my clients. All these people on the wall are dead. They all died without any justice. And so that's what keeps you going. That's what keeps you moving forward.
We can't do this work alone. We have to build power. We're building a movement ecosystem.
It's not just the litigation. It's the education, it's the organization, it's the galvanizing and mobilizing the community.
We are trying to disrupt systemic oppression, systemic racism, and we want to build it back up with something bigger, better, and more beautiful. That is Greenwood. That is who we are. We are the greatest love story that this state has ever known.
As long as there are survivors or descendants here, as long as we continue to tell this story, we're going to continue to agitate, continue to push for justice and reparations. Justice for Greenwood! Justice for Greenwood!